Is AI useful for playing and composing on guitar? Now, I know I am a tad late to the party here, but I suppose the advantage to that is that some time has gone by since large language models first hit the public scene, or should I say when they first became really publicly available. At the time, we were greeted to the world of possibilities, and all the doomspeak and whatnot that came with it. We have gained some more realistic perspective since then, and unfortunately it is still true. Some of that doomspeak was and is still on solid ground. AI certainly poses a threat to human creativity on some level, or should I say to some extent. For example, we often hear that AI will destroy the career opportunities for numerous musicians and creatives alike, or create a normalcy of expectation in the production values of musical creation that is fundamentally artificial in nature. This latter point does need a little bit of elaborating, as we have already seen this occur to a certain degree within music. The classic example being, of course, vocal auto-tuning. Prior to its existence, an excellent singer was simply that. And well, that still holds true today, but perhaps more so for the discerning ear. The average listener probably does not know, isn't aware, might not even care, how much auto-tune is being used in contemporary music, both in the studio and even in live performances. On one hand, this creates an expectation of false perfection, and on the other, it elevates mediocrity to a position of pseudo-excellence. In the future, it might not actually matter how much the musician is getting in the way of AI helping, because the average listener might not actually care, but more importantly, it would have become the normalized way of doing things. The point I am getting at here is that artificiality has actually long become an accepted form of musical creation and production. And while that isn't necessarily a bad thing in of itself, it simply means this entire argument regarding artificial in the context of music is actually really complicated. Now there is a nuanced line we can toe here, as, well, I can take my computer, draw out a musical composition, feed it into a virtual instrument, and there you have it. I will now have a haunting violin piece to add to one of my songs. All without ever actually touching a physical violin, actually more to the point, all without ever actually touching a physical musical instrument. Well, this hasn't actually really killed creativity though. In an odd sort of a way, it's added to it. I mean, I can actually play a physical violin in a sort of a rudimentary way, but that's not the point. The point is I was using my computer in the art of creativity, not as a means to replace creativity. In essence, what differentiates what I have been talking about to the likes of, I don't know, ChatGPT composing and playing a song, is that we're using computers currently today to aid our creativity, not in replacing it. There is a human at the heart of the creative process, driving it, composing, even to a certain extent executing and performing it. Although something like auto-tune has perhaps become more of a crutch for artists than an actual creative aid. I suppose the risk AI rarely poses to music is perhaps best looked at through the lens of art in general and what is occurring in our contemporary world today. I don't need to have any talent. I don't need to know how to draw, how to paint, how to interpret art in a specific way, how to articulate art in a specific way. I just simply need to be able to type to my AI system what I want, and it will regurgitate something that's pretty good, actually. I mean, sometimes it's quite hilarious what it produces, and it's so out of the out of what I asked for. But with a little bit of persistence, you can usually get it to do more or less what you want, and the results are pretty okay. Sometimes exceeding okay, actually. But there's the danger. For a general audience, this idea of being okay might become the normalized expectation. So instead of championing creativity, we're just sort of accepting okay as the standard. Now, that is sort of the worst case scenario we can have with musical creativity. And the trouble here is it's not a technological leap required to end up having music in the same position that we're seeing art in today. The technology is there. honestly, it's there today. There's not a case of we need 5 or 10 years of maturity to help the technology develop in that. No, it's there today. All that's lacking is the implementation. When I used the example of the violin, sort of the fake violin piece I created, is my computer is geared up for it. I have the plugins, I have the virtual instruments, I have the system ready to go. The AI language models aren't quite at that position yet. There are obviously systems in development that are working on actually producing exactly what I'm talking about, but they aren't quite there in a really, really convincing way that we see sort of in art outcomes. Music outcomes are, well, have a play with them. Go on Google and type around and see what you can come up with. Some of it's quite interesting. A lot of it is like, it almost feels like it needs 5 to 10 years of maturity, but that's just really not the case. It's just a matter of implementation here. And I suppose that's quite scary in a sense. However, it is not all doom and gloom. Or creativity, should I say. Just like we use computers now to enhance creativity, there is no reason why we won't be using the same process with AI. So back to my original question, is AI useful for playing and composing on a guitar? Well, like many others, I decided to ask an AI, ChatGPT in this case, to write me a 4-chord song in the key of B minor. It did that. Did the verses, the choruses, lyrics, and everything. So I asked it to produce a guitar tab for me. And, well, it did that. It actually produced a sort of a picking pattern. Although, oddly, instead of having 4 chords for the verse in the guitar tab, it gave me 2. A mistake, it repeats throughout the guitar tab. But, you know, there is something to work with there. So I took exactly that, tinkered around with it, and decided to see what I could come up with creatively. And what I ended up with isn't, well, it's not terrible is what I'm trying to get at. And certainly as the basis for something to develop out of, so the basis for a song to be built around it, it's actually not that horrible. And yeah, I can see this as being a method to certainly aid in creativity to some extent. Anyway, I will outro now with the AI collaboration, so let me know what you think of that. Is it too simplistic? I mean, what I have to work with is what I have to work with, given by the AI. But I suppose the real question I want to ask is, do you think AI will kill music creativity? And if so, to what extent? My own thoughts on that, I suppose time will tell. I do think AI is certainly going to change the way that music is done in the future, and perhaps not for the better, unfortunately. But anyway, and I'll see you next time.